Hi class, in this video I'm going to go over our topic 3 assignment, aligned assessments. For this assignment, you'll be creating a PowerPoint presentation or a digital slideshow presentation. When you are creating this presentation, you're going to be going over what formative and summative assessment are, how they are used, and give some examples throughout the presentation. Here's what you'll be asked to include on your presentation. First, you're going to want to include a description of the purpose and characteristics for each assessment type. So you'll want to include both formative assessment and summative assessment, and you'll explain what they are and how teachers use them in the classroom. Next, you'll give examples of each assessment type. So give an example of a formative assessment and then give 2 examples of a summative assessment so you can demonstrate that you fully understand these 2 different types of assessments. Then you'll be giving an advantage and a disadvantage of using technology with each assessment type. So you want to make sure that you'll explain when I am using formative assessment with technology, here's one advantage to that, and here is one disadvantage to that. And then you'll do the same for summative assessments. You'll explain when you use technology to summatively assess students, what would one advantage be and what would one disadvantage it be. When we think about these 2 assessment types, I like to think of formative assessment as something I use to inform my teaching. So it's informal. I give an assessment and it informs me and gives me data on if my teaching was successful, if students learned, and what else they need. Summative assessment is like a summary of their learning after you've gone through an entire unit, an entire chapter. So keep that in mind when you're giving both the thought, when you're thinking through both the purposes and the characteristics and giving examples of each assessment type. Formative assessment really can be almost anything that you use to see if students met the objective for the day. So it doesn't have to be an actual quiz or it doesn't have to be a test. Formative assessment really can be anything that the teacher uses to learn and understand what the students know. Now, once you discuss those types of assessment and their connections to technology, you'll want to talk about how teachers align assessments to objectives. This course is all about alignment and instructional alignment. So it's really important to think about how do teachers make sure their objective statement, all the activities that they have students do, and how they present new content to student is aligned to those objectives. And how do teachers do that? You can include examples on there to help illustrate your ideas if you'd like. Next, you'll go over the data that's gathered from these assessments and how do we utilize them in the lesson planning process. So when I think about that data that I'm gathering from formative assessment, how is that informing me when I'm lesson planning for the next day or the week? And the same goes for summative. When I have summative data, how is that informing me as I'm planning for future lessons? Then you're going to take the objectives that you wrote from your topic 2 assignment. Now, in your topic 2 assignment, you had to break apart a standard and turn it into know, understand, and do objectives. When you use these objectives, typically the do objectives are going to be the objectives that you write on your lesson plan and that you use in your classroom. The know and understand objectives are really just to help you break apart that standard and really get a good idea of what students need to know and understand. But what are they going to do is often the objective that we use. Typically, a lesson has 1, 2 objectives at maximum. So you don't want to include all of those objectives you wrote this week. That was a process where you're really going through and trying to break down that standard into smaller chunks. But choose one of those do objectives that you wrote, and you're going to then create an informative and a summative assessment that aligns to that objective you wrote. Keep in mind that when I am grading this week, I'm going to be giving you feedback. And if your feedback asks you to rewrite your objective or adjust it, use that feedback and apply it before adding it to this week's assignment. As we go through this course, we are slowly building a lesson plan. We started this last week in our topic 2 assignment by taking a standard and breaking it into some objectives. Now we're creating the assessments. Often the lesson planning process starts in this order. We start with the standard and we write an objective. We determine how we are going to assess if students met the objective. And then the teacher starts filling in, now how am I going to teach it? So this is slowly building up to a full lesson plan. So you want to make sure you take those refinements that I tell you to do on your work and keep changing your work and making it better and using those suggestions to create a really solid lesson plan by the end of this course. In addition to writing that formative and a summative assessment around your topic 2 assignment, make sure you have a title slide, a reference slide, and presenter notes. Now, presenter notes are not a separate slide. Let me show you. If you're not sure what presenter notes are, let me show you what they mean. Okay, so here we are looking at a PowerPoint presentation that I've used before to do some professional development with teachers. And when I look at my slides, you can see that the slideshow really has minimal information on here. It's just bulleted information. We have 2 types of math standards. We have content standards. Here's a list. And we also have mathematical practice standards where we're using a graphic. We want you to keep the information simple on the slides for your audience, but then you expand on your ideas here. So the presenter notes, by clicking this button here, it opens a separate area for you to type your longer information. And here you'll go ahead and explain in more detail using references and citing your work what the bulleted points mean on here. And if you were to present this to your audience, what would you be talking about and what would you be saying? So on the slides, we want to keep them simple. We don't want too many words. See, as we go through our presentation, just some bullet points. We use visuals to keep it nice and clean looking, but the bulk of the information really goes into these presenter notes. Now, when you are all finished, make sure that you include graphics to make that are relevant to the content, to make it visually appealing, and use that space appropriately. So if you have a lot of white space, increase the size of your font and really make this look like a clean presentation. You'll want to support that presentation with 2 to 3 scholarly sources. And like I showed you, you can write your extended writing in those notes and you can cite your sources there. Make sure that you always read the rubric before submitting your assignment. And so you will be graded on including both the purpose and characteristics for both assessment types. And you want to demonstrate that you fully understand what both of these assessments are and you understand the characteristics of each assessment. You'll also be graded on including those 2 examples for each assessment type. And so are the examples demonstrating best practices for students? Do they represent the assessment type that you're saying that they are? The advantages and disadvantages of technology. You want to make sure that you have a description of technology use with each assessment type. And if you want a target score, make sure that that's a comprehensive description of the advantages of disadvantages. Then we have aligning assessments to objectives. How do teachers align their assessments to objectives? You want to make sure that you demonstrate a proficient understanding of how teachers align assessments and objectives. The next graded area is how assessment data is used. So how are teachers using both summative and formative data assessment? And you want to be thinking of that logical, and if you can really think of innovative ways that teachers can use this assessment data, that will get you that target score. The next graded area is formative and summative assessments that are aligned to your topic 2 objective. So making sure that you include both a summative and a formative and it's well aligned to the objective that you wrote. And this is why you really want to revise that objective if I said there needed to be some revisions in there. Finally, we have our presentation. So are you giving me a nice, clean, beautiful presentation and our mechanics as always, and then documenting using APA. As always, if you are citing something on your reference page, there should be in-text citations, whether they are direct or indirect, within the body of your work that includes that item that is on your reference page. If you have any questions as you're working on this assignment, don't hesitate to reach out.